Hey guys, welcome back to Pack Talk. It's been a couple of weeks since I've been with you guys, so it's good to be back. Listen, if the apocalypse happens tomorrow and I get one phone call, this is the guy that I'm going to call. This is my friend Andy, Andy McKenzie from, we first met in the UK. He's originally from Scotland. He's ex-British military forces, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. This guy's a badass, and his knowledge and depth of knowledge in many different spheres to do with health and fitness is so broad that we won't get into like everything today, but I do want to get into as much as we can, because Andy's one of those guys that if I don't know what to do, I'm going to call Andy because he's going to know what to do. He's that guy. So Andy, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to Palm Springs. Welcome to Pharos, Palm Springs. I know you've been here once before.
Yeah. I'm still sweating.
Still sweating. Yeah, unfortunately today we are in Palm Springs, which is the hottest place in the world right now. And my AC in this office upstairs is not doing very well. One of the things on the roof, one of the air conditioning units on the roof went out. So I got him in here in the worst possible conditions, but he's used to that. You know, he's used to like intense conditions. So I feel like this is perfect for him.
I'm originally from Scotland, and this is like, it's not Palm Springs, it's Palm Sweating.
Yeah, Palm Springs. Yeah. You're used to the rain and so forth. So Andy, let's go right back. I mean, we first met in 2010.
Yeah.
I think it was a Jim. Was it Jim Jones' course or was it your course we did first?
No, I think it was Jim Jones.
It was Jim Jones first.
Level 1.
Okay.
No, the fundamentals.
Fundamentals. Yeah. We did a Jim Jones fundamentals at Andy's place, at your original lab.
Yes.
Yeah. And there was a bunch of really good people there, and you know, it was an interesting time in fitness because it was kind of like, you know, CrossFit was kind of in its heyday, and we were kind of like CrossFit adjacent, but not like, you know, we were more in the more traditional like strength and conditioning space. Andy's always been very good with the more, would you say rehabilitative side of strength? Or
yeah, that was my, that was a large part of my background in the military, like
yeah.
towards the end, which I then carried into my civilian career.
Right.
And then from there, it's been pretty much like a blend.
Yeah,
of how I've operated. So
kind of Andy, we were in that seminar, and basically it's a bunch of meatheads, and then the smart guy who knew a lot more than everyone else. So my friend at the time, George, who's an awesome dude. You still speak to George?
Yeah, I spoke to him the other day.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, he referred me a client actually.
Oh, he did. Yeah, he's a great guy, and he told me about it, and he's like, you got to meet this guy. He's phenomenal, and you know he was right. So me and Andy have stayed in touch over the years since 2010. And Andy's got on to move house, set up a new lab. Do you call it the lab?
Yeah,
still call it the lab. And it's mainly a private gym, right? So you just see private clients in that gym. And they'll come to him, and then you have an online business essentially where you'll coach people from all over the world, right?
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that. But let's go right back even before that, before we met, before you got into fitness. Tell me about the transition from what you did in the military, and then that transition into the health and fitness space.
Yeah, okay. I will, I mean, first off, sort of like, thank you. And I think what you're trying to say is I'm essentially old.
Oh, my fault.
Yeah, that's what it is. And
I've been around.
Yeah, I've tipped the scale at 50, and I was going to say downward, but I'm going to go back up again. For me, I joined the military when I was 16, left school, and pretty much all I wanted to do. And I joined a regiment called Junior Leaders Regiment, which was a year of essentially developing young leaders within the military. And from there, I specialized and went to the parachuting side. So you could go from one aspect, you could join the regular army, you could go commandos, which is more in the water, or parachuting and airborne, which is obviously jumping from an aircraft. I then finished that year. I did extremely well, which I was proud of. And then I joined my unit, which was 7th Parachute Regiment, the Royal Artillery side of it. And what that role actually means is I was a forward observer. So I would literally, I mean, how can I explain it in a very, very simple way? Hide in holes, call in, artillery fire into targets and different stuff like that. But you have a parachute role, and it is there's lots of disciplines within that role. So I did that course when I was 17 years old. So I passed P Company, which was which still is one of the hardest courses in the British military from a physical aspect. And then my parachute course just turned 18, so I was like genuinely fresh. Dude. Again, there's other guys that actually do that. It's not it's not abnormal to
Right.
do that. I stayed within the unit and went through all sorts of exercise and operations, which was fantastic. I went to Northern Ireland, when it was like pretty like an easy sort of almost like peacekeeping role.
Yeah, calm down at that point.
So it's fine. From there, Macedonia, Kosovo, Sierra Leone, and then I did a tour of Iraq. And pretty much from there, I just thought I've had enough of this rotation, because I was always on from 1 minute you might be on an airborne task force, you might get 2 weeks leave, and it's like you're on call and you're doing something again. So I knew that something had to change. In that, I also had a really bad back injury where I fell 3 stories, fractured one part of my neck, 3 parts of my spine, and then a lot of issues with my lower back. So essentially, if you imagine the spine is like little blocks, well, mine's looks like a triangle in the mid part. So that pretty much I thought would stop my military career. But I did maybe year and a half of rehabilitation. And that process, I was like, wow, this is awesome. If I can't pretty much go on and do my role, I want to come and do this job, because this is just fantastic. So I then got back to parachuting, and I always remember, in fact, before that, I remember one guy saying, Brigadier Hopkins marching in his office saying that you won't parachute again. And I thought, well, okay, can I at least try rehab and see how I get on? And it's just that sort of attitude of, if you tell me one thing, I'm going to just slide and sort
Don't
of...
tell me I can't.
Yeah, so it's just that I like to be optimistic and just go, all right, I'm going to try and do that. So essentially, I did that. I got back to operations, served probably about 3 or 4 years. And then that seed was still in the back there. I thought, I want to change roles. And it took me 5 years of going on individual courses. And one of the problems was, because in my role, I was on observation, I was a forward observer, and that was a pretty prestigious role. You're always getting called away. And I thought, something's got to give. I need to genuinely move. And Iraq was my last tour. And as soon as the fighting operations actually finished, we moved into sort of like a more peace side of it. Then I came back and started my physical career. Essentially, in the military, what that looks like is you do a year of Army Physical Training Corps, which is a year of just developing lots of different skills and courses and stuff like that. And so I'm probably going to jump around a bit as well. Before I actually went on that course, within the unit itself, I was part of a pre-parachute selection, which is, pardon my French, a fucking awesome job. Essentially, you're developing guys who are going to go through P Company. And you're in a powerful position to actually build people up, and also crucify people as well, which I was pretty good at in terms of that. But that they were fantastic, because it allowed me to experience different aspects of the physical side and what is required. So when I went on to my year-long course, I felt like I was already head and shoulders above certain guys. And the other one, I was always physically fit as well, because that's part of the role. When you're an airborne soldier and you're always ready for operations, then you're never that far away from just to go. So when I did that, I then specialised within the rehabilitation, because that's where I wanted to get back to. And I've had loads of injuries we can sort of talk about and how I've managed them. Essentially, I got selected to go to a place called Herdley Court, which is where they do the rehabilitation. That's another 6 months of specialisation, which is...
You're just studying at that point?
Yeah, studying. It's information through a fire hose, and which the military is actually very, very good at. And what it does, and this is what I'm really thankful for, is my coaching career was literally just laser focused. There wasn't social media. There wasn't the distractions we have now. It's pretty much, there's books, there's VHS tapes, so that's how old it is, and DVDs and stuff like that. And you learn, and then you apply, and you go back again. I got to some point, finished that. I then went on to work in recruit training, which is guys who join the military. So it was again another facet of developing people at a different level.
Training them up to get into the military.
Training them to get in, and then dealing with the rehab side. And then for me, there was just that little part of, I don't know what it was, but I had that little bump of, I want to do something different. And by chances, then I met some guys who were doing rugby, and I thought, oh, I'm going to start coaching these rugby guys from a strength and condition perspective, and just bringing in a different lens. Whilst I was in the rehab side of it, then I had a strength and conditioning background as well, because I started like training for that, and I started blending in strength conditioning into rehab, because I thought, all right, this guy's damaged his shoulder, but I really want to blast his legs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, is there elements that I can genuinely bring in rather than just doing all these, like physio type exercise bands where people just get bored?
Yeah.
Blending all that in together, I got offered I'm sort of like trying to condense this, offered a job to work in with professional rugby, and I just thought, I'm going to end my career, 16 years, when people normally do 22. And spent some time in sport. Again, there was an aspect that I still wasn't satisfied, and that was purely on this perspective of I was just only dealing with rugby players, and I thought I really want to just have a skill set which I can adapt to anybody walking through. So from there, I then started training, because of my military background, like a lot of polar expedition explorers, and then strongmen, and just like a whole mishmash of people, because there's principles that you can actually like train people from. And that's when I just started developing there. I left rugby because it started becoming like a 7-day a week, like full on, no time for actually me. And that's when I moved up to the lab where we actually met.
Yeah. I
was working with another rugby team at the time. And I then felt like I wanted to move away from that as well, because I always get this little sort of like nudge that says
time to move on.
Time to move on, time to actually just grow in a different way. And I think that always like takes like a leap of faith as well. I get then offered a job in France, which was one of those like, and I always remember people saying, what happens if it doesn't go well? And I was like, I can always come back.
Right. Yeah.
What's the worst that can happen? Like, what's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is I move to France, I do 1 or 2 years there, I don't like it, and I can always come back to the UK.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to actually listen to other people's fears and feel them. And I thought, okay, I'm going to go with my gut. I'm going to grow. Went for 2 years, loved it. It was fantastic. And then I moved to a place in Cirencester in the UK and opened up probably the 4th iteration of the lab as it stands. And I've done lots in between that as well that we can sort of like unpack. But that is a very, as quick as I can.
Broad overview. So how old, so you're in the military from 17 years old till, how old were you when you left the military?
Probably early 30s.
Early 30s, okay. Yeah. And throughout that whole time, you're involved in fitness in some fashion, in rehabilitation in some fashion. You're always learning, both in the military and in that kind of like post phase. And I want you guys to think about that, because, we are in an age of people getting advice from people on Instagram or TikTok who have literally done a weekend course, or they just work out in the gym, and they're giving advice to like everybody in society. Whereas Andy's been doing this his whole life, and he's like at super high level. And so if you're looking for advice online, please find someone like Andy and not some 24-year-old TikToker who's giving you advice about what you should eat and how you should work out, All that said.
Can I just say something on that? Because I feel this is appropriate. You've got to be mindful, if somebody's been doing something for 20 years, it doesn't automatically make them the best person.
No.
I think because you can repeat the same things over and over, think you're right, and you've really got to remain open. I think you've got to remain open and a student. Yeah. And I think one of the things for me is, I always tell when I work with other coaches, and even like some clients, is whenever you're out looking at a coach, I always ask things like, you should ask things like, what have you failed at in the last 6 months? Right. Like, how do you overcome injuries? What are your current goals? What was your last goals? Like, what's your trainer like right now? I think you should almost interview a coach before you actually hand over your hard-earned cash. And because we live in a world now where people are performing a role which is very, very easy to grab information, repackage it, sound fantastic. And I think if I was going to spend any money, then I would interview that person and really get stuck into them. Yeah, we're in a world of very immediate marketing. So someone kind of puts on a presentation for a very brief amount of time, but that's not necessarily who the person is. And you only really understand who the person is through a more in-depth conversation. Yeah. Right? So you just need to have
more conversations.
When you take this thing, when you take somebody away from ChatGPT and ask them to say, can you just say that again? It's like, I'm lost now.
Yeah, exactly. So, you've left the military. You've set yourself up with your own lab. How was that? How was the transition from, essentially you've worked for someone else your whole life, and then suddenly you're kind of like working for yourself and you're running your own business and calling your own shots. Was that an easy transition for you, or how are you? Because I was shit at the business side of things, and I'm still kind of shit at it. If I didn't have Emylee, this whole thing would be a disaster. But how have you been with that? Because, you love fitness, I love fitness. You love working out, I love working out. We both have that kind of like, I want to do hard shit kind of vibe. But the business, the sales, the marketing, all that shit that comes with running your own business, how are you with that?
Still with my foot on the accelerator.
Right.
Or the gas pedal, if it's here. For me, I think it's really important to identify what you're genuinely not good at.
Right.
And equally understand and be aware of where your skill set truly lies. And then once you get to a certain point where you can and should pay, then pay someone else to come in and fill the gap.
Right.
And again, it goes back to this idea, because if I am going to ask someone to hire me as a coach, then I've got to be open to fully appreciate that I don't understand, therefore I have to pull him back in. It took me far too long to get somebody else to come in and help with the business side of it.
Right. Did you have someone now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. In the background, it's almost like admin. And the other one, this is where powerful mentors can come in. So I've had lots of different mentors at that time to grow. And then the other one is, for me, is just not beat myself up for getting things wrong.
Right.
And again, what I find in the military is you always have, we call them a PXR report. So anything that you do, you have a review afterwards, so you can just understand and say, if I did that again, then how would I approach it? And when you do that, you tend to look forward to the next thing with a completely different lens.
Yeah, for sure.
Which I find super helpful.
One of the things I've struggled with, kind of running a business and keeping up with everything else, is that there's a fine line between. And I'm very good at accepting that there's certain things I'm just not good at. And the reason I'm not good at them is because, frankly, I'm not that interested in them and I don't pay them enough attention. And oftentimes then it's like, okay, I'm going to get someone else to do that. Like Laura, my operations manager, is the perfect example, because she is like the Excel sheet queen, like data, Excel. She thrives in that. Like, whereas I'm just like staring at the screen, like, what am I looking at here? But then I had this thing of like, I don't want to always be reliant on other people to do things. I still feel like there's value in becoming capable of something, even if I'm not like good at it or, not going to thrive in that area. I hate the thought of myself just becoming like, oh, I'm just going to palm that off, or I'm just going to palm that off. But at a certain point, you kind of have to, in order to move forward, because you can't bog yourself down with everything.
Yeah.
And there's certain things that I'm really good at that would be better than the other person. And that's kind of what I have to focus on, what I have to channel myself into, because the other stuff becomes a massive distraction. So I always find myself like fighting with that, like how much of this is worth my time versus I should just get someone else to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I would say that's about managing two things: expectations and energy. The other one is expect to actually work incredibly hard and put in an insane amount of hours. But the beauty is, at the end of that, what you can do is, for example, from speaking to an operations manager, you can have a much better conversation. Like for me, I used to do all my videos, all my photography and different things like that. And now when I want content done, I understand or I've got an idea of what that takes to a certain level. And therefore, when I'm chatting with somebody, I've got a much better idea. So therefore I can have a better conversation,
right? Rather
than going at something blind and just going, oh, I don't know what to do, and hand that off. That's when you can become pretty much lazy. And lazy in a sense of, you might allow the wrong person to come in. So if you've got not an implicit understanding, but if you've got some sort of depth, you can come in, and because that person might come in, speak very well, tell you what you think you actually need to hear, but not what you want to hear. And again, if you consider that what you want and what you need is two sort of like different things, I think it's highly appropriate to actually do that and go through that fire. Yeah. Because then when you hire somebody, it's going to be like the right person, because you've got that knowledge.
Right.
So
right.
I'm afraid there's work.
Yeah, for sure.
That's what it is.
With your background, with your personality, and you know, with your private business now, what kind of people are drawn to you, would you say? Like, who reaches out to you and says, Andy, I need you? Like, is it?
The biggest thing I'd say is, I think being older, I was going to say I attract older men, but I want to say that comes across in the right way.
I'm sure
you do. I
attract
older men. I would say a lot of the guys, when there's a mix. I've trained one guy, Yuvika, who is like a world-class ultramarathon runner. And he's currently in Serbia in sort of the anti-terrorism squad. Before Yuvika like took me on as his coach, he was looking around at different people and just felt that I was the right fit from just discernment and professionalism.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I've conducted myself online and I've kept who I am. Because I mean, I've been online for a long time. I don't have a massive following, but I've got a great business.
Yeah.
Purely because I won't like bend to the algorithm or anything like
Right.
that. So, I mean, I am who I am in person as well as online, and I think that's quite key. What I find most of is guys who are at the end of the line. They might have bounced between like a doctor, a GP, a physical therapist, I think they call them here, a physio, an osteopath, maybe 3 or 4 other coaches who have just been terrible.
Right.
And they've got like that, the hip pain that doesn't go away, the shoulder pain, the body just doesn't feel right, always tired, and they've had so many options, and it's like, I'm going to go with you. So
yeah.
I'm almost like, I'm the last guy,
right?
But equally, I should have been the first guy,
right?
And I'll tell you what I do right now. I strip everybody right back to the absolute basics, and the power of coaching for me is understanding what to remove.
Yeah,
I feel totally. Like a lot of coaches. Yeah. It's this thing of you might have a lot of knowledge, but you don't have to use it all.
Right, totally.
Yeah. If you look at anybody,
I see that a lot.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I've got all this. I'm going to throw on it. They vomit everything, and the person walks away like, I'm still overwhelmed.
Right.
Because if you look, we live in a day and age where everybody's coming from different directions. So I always pull people right back to center, to baseline, and say, hey, look, let's just start with that. Here's the thing, especially for coaches who might be watching. When you can truly do that from a good place, even by when you speak it in person, people can genuinely feel your experience. Whereas if your high mind is, I don't really know what to do, and you start adding things on, this is when you're creating something.
Junk volume.
Yes, just junk volume.
Yeah,
people can see through that.
Yeah, so. And it's almost like it's an insecurity that makes people do that, because I see it all the time. It's like when I look at a program, it's always like, okay, what can you take out? What can you afford to take out of that?
Yeah.
As opposed to like, oh, what more can we add? It's like usually it's more about subtraction than addition, and I think the insecurity of like, I don't really believe in myself just leads to basically attrition. It's like, oh, I'm just going to work my clients as hard as I can and have them do all this stuff so that they're exhausted, so then they feel like they had a good workout.
Yeah.
Rather than thinking like, oh, this was meaningful for this reason, this was meaningful for that reason, oh, this helped me do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, I think, that was not to badmouth anything, but I think, ultimately that was the problem with the CrossFit methodology to an extent, was it just became about attrition. Like, who can still be alive at the end of it? Like, who can still be uninjured, able to continue, at the end of whether it was the games or whatever it was, rather than it being purely about like who is the fittest in terms of like, strength, power endurance, like across that spectrum. It became more about who can survive.
Yeah.
And that's a very different thing.
I was just thinking that word when you were saying that, like who can survive. If I go back to looking at my military career and then going into rugby and where I am now, people again look at me and you think my training's actually going to be hard.
Right.
It's only hard when you're actually ready.
Right.
Mine's is super effective.
Right.
When I go back to pre-para staff, one of the first things that I felt was we're just smashing people for no reason.
Yeah.
Now, when you come to test week and things like that, there is a point where you are depleting somebody of their physical resources, so that when they've got nothing left, you then mentally see, what's this person going to do?
Yeah.
But you have to prepare that person for that.
Right.
You can't just smash them from day one, unless they're coming into a period where that is required. And one of the things that I did when I was in pre-para staff was look at the curriculum that we were doing and say, look, how can we genuinely develop these guys? Because when you look at the circuit's inside where it went from like handstand push-ups, for example, into normal push-ups, into tricep dips, into cross thumb push-ups. And I was like, we've got a circuit here, which is the same movement, the same pattern. By the time they get to the third one, the pattern's just gone. We're not training anything. We're not even really developing an energy system.
Right.
We're just getting these guys to the point where they're going to get injured and that we're going to lose like a good candidate. When it comes to test them, then let's test them.
Yeah.
If I then fast forward that when I went to recruit training, it was exactly the same thing. People with this mindset of, I got absolutely smashed when I was in basic training. I got absolutely smashed. Therefore, I'm going to do that. And I was like, hey, what is my job here? Right. What is my role? I need to develop these people. Yeah. And for me, it was like, right, by the end of these 12 weeks, you will be able to do this, this, and this. So I then started to look at the knowledge that I had accrued and then put that into my lessons to the point where everybody started developing. Yeah. And the same with rugby as well. Rugby was always this, let's replicate the game. And I was like, hey, the game is a game. Yeah. I want to push that away and I want to develop you from a strength condition point of view. Right. We're always getting head injuries. Right. Let's strengthen the neck. Yeah. Let's look at the shoulders. Let's strengthen the posterior cuff. Let's look at the hips. Let's strengthen all the smaller muscles within the hip and not try and replicate the game. So it's always pulling back and think, right, what do I genuinely need within this session? And I remember working with one of my first mentors when I went into strength condition, a guy called Jeremy Moody. And he said to me, look, you need to get a philosophy of why you do things. And then the way you get that is by immersing into your craft. And then one day it will pop out. And at the end of it, of all of this, mine was move with a purpose to improve. Because that's the lens that I look at with every session. I look at it and think, right, if someone stopped me right now, look to my training program, I can tell you and give you a rationale for everything that's on there. Right. From literally from the cardio they do at the start to the stretching they do at the end, because it all links in with what I see that person needs.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you used that phrase, move with a purpose, because that's one of the big phrases we always use in Build, because essentially that program, the Build program, which as most of you guys know, that is kind of our signature program at the club, it came out of a combination of, CrossFit sensation mixed with bodybuilding movement patterns, mixed with Emylee's kind of like rehab background. So we really are working on that mechanic strength and conditioning thing in a meaningful, progressive way, rather than, like you said, just smashing someone out of the gate, like someone coming in day one doing like snatches and attempting bad chin-ups and just like, it shouldn't be about chasing exhaustion. That's not what we're doing when we're training. Yeah. We are really trying to grow. We're always trying to build. We're trying to improve. And I think so many things in the fitness space rely on that sensation of just exhaustion. And you think you're getting a great workout because you're finishing it, you're sweating, you're tired, and your heart rate was something like, oh my God, that was so good. And it was good because it was fun. But you always have to ask yourself, like, what purpose did that solve? And like Andy said, there's a time and a place for that kind of thing. But it's not like every day out the gate. Like the job of the coach is not to exhaust you. The job of the coach is not to destroy you. It's to build you and to give you that kind of like pathway to a stronger self. And that's kind of like our goal as a club in all these different areas and all these different classes we do. Like you said, like I want there to be a reason behind everything. Like, why am I going to that core class? Why am I going to that build class? Why am I going to that boxing class? They all have a thing within themselves, like boxing's super fun and core is going to give me great out and all that thing. But it's like, boxing improves my power output. It gives me better coordination. It works on my reflexes, stuff like that. That's the reason behind it. Like, boxing's fun as a sport, and it's fun to do, and it's fun to hit things, and it's fun to, but there's a reason why it's fun. There's a reason why you are getting better at something. It just doesn't exist in a vacuum. You're working on, your body's response to that thing. So that's how I think you should always approach classes. Like, what is this class actually doing for me in terms of my development, rather than just making me feel tired? And again, I think that's what, in the fitness space, that's the trap it falls into all the time. Because often you're trying to please as many people as possible. And it's easy just to tire people out. So you can just like do a bunch of stuff and they're going to be exhausted. It's just so easy, but so against what you really should be doing if you want to improve your metabolic health, grow your lean muscle tissue, truly improve your VO2 max without just doing junk intensity like we talked about. So always think about that when you go into these sessions. I do want to get into, because I know you've had a bunch, and obviously I got a few right now, like the injury space. And we're in a really interesting space with injuries right now, because we are talking about the Wolverine stack, we are talking about peptides. This has become part of our language, but obviously that shit wasn't around, when you were really helping people overcome, injuries. What are the kind of gaps that you saw in the recovery space as you were coming up, and where you kind of touched on already, but where did you really find your niche in transcending someone from injury to back to performance?
Not treating them like they are broken.
Right.
So a lot of people, when they're injured, for example, if you look at, I think what you're doing really well at the minute is you've got an injured knee, but you haven't got an injured whole system. You're still training upper body, the other part of the leg. And I started to really push people. So I remember working with, I worked for about a year and a half in Special Forces Support Group, which guys who are literally ahead of the curve, always away on operations, and need a sort of a high state of readiness. And then we had physios treating them like with kids' gloves. You damage your knee, but they have to be very careful. So I used to have this sort of like Man of Steel Fridays in rehab, which essentially, if you had like a knee injury, then you would do the Man of Steel upper body, and you would get absolutely smashed.
Right.
Because if you look at it, move with the purpose to improve. Remember, we're talking about fun and we're talking about all these different things, but some people need to be pushed beyond their means, because that's what they need mentally as well. So I brought in that strength conditioning element to link with and augment the rehab side of it, because strength is a nervous system response that you're actually looking for. And for me, that's when I started to create my own way of how do I actually develop these guys without just giving them like 3 times 12, banded. When here's the thing, when you've got somebody who's super strong, super fit, and if you give them that, they're just going to get demotivated. Yeah. And for me, I was like, okay, look, let's train the other side and let's hit that hard. Yeah. Let's train the lower body. Let's look at all the small things now that we've genuinely got time for. Yeah. And that's when my sort of like lens expanded into, it's not just rehabilitation, it's still a strength and conditioning plan. But we're looking at movement in a particular way,
and it's motivational. I think one of the worst things when you have an injury is you kind of lose a little bit of hope, and it can be very depressing if you let it be, because you're like, I can't do this stuff anymore. Like, what am I going to do now, kind of thing. And you could spiral in that way. But if you take that approach that you just mentioned, you can still smash yourself. You can still find really fun ways to work out and to keep pushing yourself in a different way. You just have to not give up, and you just have to not accept that you are this poor fragile thing, and it's like you just got to find a different way. So that's the way that I look at it. I'm just gonna no matter what happened. I've never had anything horrifically bad, touch wood, that happened to me. But whether it's knee, whether it's shoulder stuff, whether it's elbow stuff, whatever it is, there's always a way around it, and there's always things that you can do. Sometimes obviously you need the advice of a professional like Andy to say okay, you can't do that, but you definitely can do this. And when you can do this, you can do this hard. You don't, I don't need to treat you with kid gloves and pretend like you're a complete invalid. There's plenty of things that you can do. And that then gives you that same sensation of oh shit, that was badass. I can do this. And so I think the saddest thing is someone that's oh no, you should just rest. And then they just get okay. And then this is sad journey into decline, as opposed to keeping that vibrant spirit alive of oh no, I can still do stuff. Yeah. And you've all seen it. You've seen people do amazing things with one leg and one arm, and really badly, severely handicapped, but still doing incredible things. So I always try and bear that in mind. There's so much you can always do. I might not be able to do jiu-jitsu right now, but there's plenty of other things I can occupy my time with. I'm still struggling to find the time to do all the things I actually want to do. Yeah. It's always not accepting defeat in any way, and just thinking, okay, just pivot, just change course.
One of the cool things, if you go back to your question as well, is look, what did I start to look at? It really is, and I want to reinforce it, is bringing just principles from a strength conditioning aspect into a rehabilitation environment. Yeah. Because remember, you can still train the whole body. The other one is, I know this from seeing it in person, if I go back to my rugby days and working with SFG as well, I remember one guy, I coached a guy called Jacko Van Gas, and he lost like below his arm and his like half of his like thigh. So if you look at his quads, pretty much half of that sort of like gone. And that was from an IED. Now, this young man blew me away with just his determination. And if I treated him softly,
it wouldn't work.
He would have regressed back, and he wanted, and I really used to push him to the extent of, look, we can't do say like lateral raises. So I mean, you're talking like 2006, 2007 here. We were getting all sorts of band attachments just to get him to actually do it, because it was like, I want to actually move my body. The great thing was, we shared a gym with the local rugby team, and some of their guys were going through rehab. And bearing in mind then, Jacko then would train his opposite arm, but he would be on a Swiss ball, doing 50 kilograms sort of like bench presses. I mean, talking building up. I mean, absolutely smashing one side. And the opposite side wasn't as atrophied as you think it would be.
Right.
A lot of people get this idea, oh, if I train one side, I'm going to have this huge side. And it's like, well, like, consider this, how long does it actually take to build appreciable sort of like lean mass?
Right.
So if you're injured, let's say you're going to be out for like 8 weeks, you're not going to get that much smaller. So therefore, it really pays. It really pays the way forward to really push and train hard.
Yeah.
And this guy, Jacko Van Gas, he blew it away. He ended up in the Paralympics, got gold because of his determination. So he did cycling, went around the velodrome, and that's because we worked on developing sort of like single leg strength, and the leg that he had where his vastus lateralis had gone. Yeah. Well, all right, let's call that 100. But I always said to him, look, let's maximize like the 60% that we've actually got left. So instead of like, oh, I haven't got a leg, it's like, no, we can really push you hard. And when you have that attitude, and you will then lift everybody else up in the gym. Yeah. And at the same time, when you then consider it, because I love the vibe around here. It's pretty cool. And I think if you have that where you see other people are injured, but they're still getting stuck in, because I mean, you're going to get injured one day. I mean, touch wood. I'm trying to avoid it at the minute. But you then want to be around different people who have actually got through it, rather than not come to the gym. Oh, I can't do anything. It's like, hey, there's always something that can be done. And the last one that I want to touch on, there's also the aspect of the eustress of exercise. Everybody talks about what it can do for the energy, but what it actually does for the pure feel good factor. As soon as you finish the session, it's like, I'm really glad I did that. I really enjoyed that. I needed that. And they're really, really important things to actually.
And also the hormonal release you get from exercise. Because if you want to boost growth hormone, testosterone, like you said, you can on one side, if you're still lifting heavy, you're still getting that release. And that's super important for your vitality, your mindset. Feeling good, feeling alive, feeling energized. If your hormones decline, just like if your hormones atrophy like your bad side, then you're in real trouble. So finding ways to keep that alive and keep that as stimulated as you possibly can, and I think obviously we're in an interesting time with the peptide thing, and that's giving people an extra kind of like edge. But we're trying to emphasize right now, yes, that's good, but it's built on everything else. Like, you can't just take peptides and expect to get results. Like, you still have to do the strength and conditioning. You still have to do the nutritional stuff. You still have to sleep. You still have to pay attention to all those other habits, all that other stuff before you get into, okay, and now maybe peptides. And I think that's the mistake with all these things, right? Anything that comes on the market, whether it was like steroids or GLP-1s or, whatever diet is the next thing. It's like, some of it may work, but it all has to still be built on the foundation of strength and conditioning. Right, yeah. You have to do the basics right before you can move on to the advanced stuff. And when something comes out that has like good results and gets good gets good data behind it, and they have the before and afters and everything looks like astonishing, you're like, okay, great. But because it's easier to pay for something than it is to work for something, people just fall into that trap of like, oh, I'll just get the thing and then I won't have to do the work. Got to do the work. And then maybe the thing will give you that extra 10% or whatever it is, but you still got to do the work. I see that, all the time. And, I just don't want people to, these things are not the solution. They are an addition to what you've already built and what you've already like taken the time to build that foundation and gain that knowledge, and then you're just adding to it. So we got this mentorship coming up, this Built to Last seminar, which leads into a mentorship program on June 15th. And it's basically that. It's basically saying, yes, we now have access to these peptides. We have the system in place. We have the network in place. But we want you to understand that this isn't on its own the solution. This is part of an overall framework of, we want you to make sure you're getting this much sleep, eating this much protein, eating this much carbohydrates, doing this amount of workouts a week, doing this amount of strength workouts a week, doing some zone 2 conditioning here. Like, nothing exists in a vacuum. Everything works together in synergy to get you to that next phase, that next level. So they are a tool, like many things are a tool, but they are not the solution in a vacuum, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to it. The biggest thing that I see, right, is load management. And a lot of people take something like that and they end up injuring themselves because their body isn't ready.
Right.
Or they push too much, or they don't train, or they don't move well. I mean, that's another one. I've seen people who don't move well. They suddenly turn into... They think and feel superhuman, and then they just go and bust a hip, which is great for me because when they come to me, I'm like, okay, cool, let's fix that.
Yeah.
For me, it's about augmenting. Now, I'll be upfront. I don't take anything like that at the minute because I don't feel that I genuinely need it.
Right.
And if I felt that I did or I was lacking in something, and I'm pretty much dialed in terms of like sleep, nutrition, different things like that. And I always look at life through, like, have I got enough energy for my kids at the end of the day?
Yeah.
And if I had everything dialed in and I felt like I needed that because like it would be better for my family, then I would 100% go in from that. But I would certainly go in with a lot of discernment and really understand what I'm actually getting into. Yeah. Because I think people jump into stuff like that because it looks super cool. And it's like, oh, look at the amazing transformation. It's like, if you look under the hood and what other the other problems that person may or may not have, then that's the only thing that I'd be super careful of.
Always goes back to there's no such thing as a free lunch, right?
Yeah, no, 100%. I just think you have to go with your eyes wide open when it comes like that.
Yeah. You touched on family, so let's go there next. So, because on your timeline, where did you meet your wife?
2017.
2017, and that was before France or after France?
After France.
After France, you came back, you met your wife, and then you had your kids. And how was that for you? Because you got married fairly late, like I did.
Yeah.
And you went from like you're a single guy, you have your business, you already built a successful business at that point, you have all your clients. Don't take this the wrong way. I say the same thing on Belts, but you could afford to live a fairly selfish life at that point.
Yeah.
Like you said, you could afford to go to France and just think, like, what's the worst that could happen? Because at that point, you didn't have the family, you didn't have those responsibilities.
Yeah, you can make different.
You can make
decision processes different.
It was the same for me when I did one of those stuff. I didn't have any commitments. It was like, fuck it, of course I'm gonna go. But now I couldn't do it. I couldn't leave my kids. Was that an easy transition for you? Were you ready for it? It was like,
I don't think you could ever be ready for that. There's a couple of things. I knew I developed an online business in 2017, and I felt the draw for that because I wanted a certain life when I had kids. I wanted a certain amount of freedom and flexibility, and hence why I thought, right, if I go online now, I can build a system because I'm older and I had kids 45. You know what I mean? So a lot older than most. And I'm really grateful for that because if I had them at 30 or 35, I don't think I'd be the same as I am with them.
Yeah,
I'm probably a lot more relaxed.
Yeah.
And I've got a lot more flexibility. Not ready, but certainly I enjoy it. And it's made me grow in completely different ways. And I've got a son and a daughter. And a son brings out the protective role. And then your daughter literally just lights up the different part of you. It makes you feel like you've got something inside that you never knew you had.
Right.
So, and what that actually did for me was really look at relationships in the respect of who I was coaching, because again, it always comes back, for me, everything comes back to energy. And it's like, if I'm around this person, is he taking away my energy? Or, I mean, equally, I've also got to think the same. Am I draining that person's energy?
Right.
It's not like everybody revolve around me.
Right.
It's really think about what do I bring into a relationship as well, which is generally quite key. So they have certainly made my life much, much better, even though there is, you know, I mean, there's always that sort of fact of I've got to be super mindful about, you know, like what I do and decisions I make.
Yeah.
But then again, I've got like a huge amount of experience now where I pretty much know what I actually want and moving forward. I mean, I work out in Mexico every other month, and that is, you know, like a big decision that I take because that's a way. At the same time, I've got, I mean, I still sort of FaceTime on a daily basis and things like that. And what I also, and the mistake that I made actually when I first had kids is I changed who I was. And I remember changing who I was then, and I fundamentally got lost. And I was a bit like, oh, I don't know what I am anymore. I'm a dad, and what does that actually mean? And I was like, right, hold on a minute. Like, you need to be you at your core, because your kids then are going to be drawn to that energy. Otherwise, you are going to just be walking around as a ghost of your former self. Right. And what do you want your kids to be around? You want to be around like somebody who, to them, is superhuman. Yeah. And that was probably another one of the reasons why. So I had my previous gym, and it was a bit cold and sort of a cold sort of like place, not really very welcoming. And I thought, right, I need to move this place because I need to do some rehabilitation for my daughter. So I then made, you know, like the right decisions and put myself in certain spaces to make sure that could happen. Yeah. So for me, I think kids are like a huge sort of like driver, and I take my role as a dad really seriously as well. Yeah. I fully appreciate everybody does. But for me, deep down, like I'm all in, you know, like committed to it. Like, so yeah. Yeah.
And it really gives you, you know, one of the things you see obviously is people, younger people, maybe single people, giving advice to mums and dads. And it's really hard to understand when you were talking about energy and that kind of stuff. It's really hard to understand how hard it is for parents, unless you are one, unless you've been through that. In terms of like, you know, there is a, you know, getting the kids up, getting the kids to school, getting them dressed, you know, doing the sports stuff after school. Like they have their like, you know, activities, you know, that you want them to experience and thrive in. So, you know, that's a commitment. Like whether it's my kids like T-ball or jiu-jitsu or whatever it is, like you want to get them to those things, experience those things, but that obviously comes at a cost to your energy and your schedule. And there's only so many hours in the day. Energy is a limited resource. So once you have a family, and if you're programming for someone that has a family, or, you know, they're a busy mom or they're a busy dad, whatever it is a different thing than programming for someone who's 23 years old without any other commitments beyond themselves. It is a different thing.
I look at some of my content now as a dad, and I look and think, oh, shut up. I know, shut and up. That's me. You know,
totally. Me too.
You know, nothing. Do you know what? Here's what I'll say, and here's what I see a lot online. Really good people saying, I don't want to bring kids into this world. And I just want to say, please don't do that. If you are a good man and a good woman, get together and bring in kids, because if you look at it, that's what we actually need.
That's what we need.
Do you know what I mean? If you look at it, like if two good people come together and bring another 2, 3, 4, I mean, have as many as you can, like little good humans into the world.
Otherwise, it's just the bad people having kids.
I mean, look at that. Then that's going to be 6 awesome people around, and then you continue from there. So, and just this idea of like, you'll be tired, but you'll get energy from elsewhere. But I appreciate life at a deeper level.
Oh, for sure.
Which is great.
For sure. I mean, not to get too deep into this, but like kids are one of those things that give you ultimate purpose. You know, you see people that sometimes, you know, they do experiences depression and anxiety because they kind of lack a sense of purpose and direction. And, you know, I think kids give you that innately. Like as soon as you have kids, it's like, oh my God, like I gotta, you don't have the option to stop. Yeah. You gotta keep going because you got kids, you know, you got to provide for them. So it's, you know, it is very like stimulating and very kind of like you wake up and think, okay, how can I make our lives better? You know, because if it was just myself, you know, it would be easy to just like fall off. you know, it'd be easy to, you know, fuck up more and decide, actually, I don't want to get out of bed today. But you can't do that. You've got responsibilities. You've got a family that you're trying to provide for. So I think it is a very natural way to give you a really strong sense of purpose and drive, because you're not just building a better life for yourself, you're building a better life for your family and for other people. And that is more powerful than just making your situation better. You know? So we'll just wrap it up by kind of like talking about where you are now in your life. I mean, Andy's out here, like just said to you guys, he works a lot in Mexico, training some private clients down there. You kind of travel all over really to specifically train clients who have like a fairly high level need, I would say, right? Yeah. They have like very specific things that they want to do and specific goals. And your business is a combination of the private work you do at home, the lab work, the online stuff, and then this travel, and you're kind of like managing that whole situation together. Yeah. And where are you now, and where do you want to be in like 10 years? Or are you doing everything? Is this kind of the thing you want to do now?
Yeah. The challenge is everybody sort of like seems to be worried or getting lost in the advent of AI and things like that. And for me, I really feel that the in-person that's never going to go away. I mean, because if you look at this idea of like longevity, right? Everybody talks about the fitness side of it, but the biggest predictor of longevity is community and like interpersonal relationships. Yeah. So I'm almost doubling down on that, and that's why I went through a period of online only, and it made me just fall out of love with it. Yeah, and totally. I just thought, I did very well in the pandemic and stuff like that, which I was super grateful for. But as soon as I could get back to in-person coaches, then 100% all in there. Yeah, I think in terms of like development, there's two things I'm actually looking at. Is one, I'm working on a piece of hardware called Intent, which is essentially bringing in aspects of velocity-based training with all of my training methodology that I've actually got, and piecing those two together. So that, and the idea behind it is, I don't really want people to be on tech all of the time. So I want people to like use a piece of hardware, use the app, but get to the point where one day it might be, hey dude, you need to just go out for like a 40-minute run or go for a walk, or you need to like come off this and write your training program into a journal because you're spending too much time on it. Because I really feel that people are getting a little bit lost on it. I'm from a different generation, so I can fully appreciate that. I feel, and I'd like to think, there's going to be a swing back to where people want to be more in and around other people. So without going into just having everything on tech, I want to use it as a tool, because that's what it actually is. So here's a super cool tool that you can actually use, but you're going to get to the point where you won't actually need it. Now that seems like a pretty crazy like business model, but essentially my idea of this is going to be like a baton. So once you're finished with it, effectively you pass the baton on to somebody else and say, hey, look, I found this really valuable in terms of my training. It made me really appreciate and understand load. And I'll give you an example for that is, some people, what I find is they might have like 4 times 2, 85%. Right. But they feel tired that day. Yeah. And there's always like a 15 or so % like wiggle room in terms of what you bring in any given session. Velocity is actually very, very good for that. So you might come in and think, I'm really tired, I can't do the session. But it's like, well, no, you can. You can just reduce the actual intensity. Yeah. You can reduce the weight, move the bar with still the same intention, still the same bar speed. You're not going to completely destroy your system, and therefore you're still edging forward. Whereas people then sometimes come out of their mindset is, I'm just going to get through it. And all of a sudden they're just digging a deeper hole. Right. So they're always, again, I look at this idea of like taking the, what are you doing today and is it robbing tomorrow? Right. I mean, case in point, a lot of people depend on caffeine too much. Yeah. I mean, we're talking like 6, 7, like a lot of cups per day because it's keeping them going, but they're literally always
draining their adrenal.
Yeah, I mean, they're taken away from tomorrow, so they're stuck in that cycle. Yeah. So that's the route that I'm going long term, because I can see it, but at the same time, I don't want to get sucked into everything has to be an app, everything has to be like hardware. So that's one aspect. My online side is like still growing. I still really enjoy the group aspect as well. I've got a really like buoyant community, and then the individual, I always like travel in around Europe, Mexico as well, which again really gives me a chance to be in person, because that's when I feel I come most alive.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is great.
Yeah. I feel like with the AI thing, for me, it's like I think all those tech nerds are massively underestimating what us human beings that aren't sociopaths actually want, which is to be around each other and communicate with each other. Like, for me, it's like, it's the same thing of like, if I phone the bank, I actually want to speak to someone. I don't want to be like passed around by a bunch of like computers that just like drive me insane. It's like, I just want to speak to someone. Like, and I feel most of us feel that way. I want to actually, have communication, conversation.
I think I can.
And I think they're underestimating that.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are going to reject it. Like, I think it's, they're saying it's the future. Like, everything is going to go this way. There's not going to be any of these jobs anymore. And I'm like, I don't know. I just don't think that's what most of us want. Again, that narrative is being led by like these uber rich tech nerds in Silicon Valley who want us to believe that so that we all buy into it. But there's a big part of me that's like, I don't know, guys. Like, it just bores me.
Yeah, I think for me, right, I think when I look at my son, right, I am bringing him up completely different and better into some degree, especially from the emotional aspect. And being emotionally available, and that's purely because of reading stuff online and thinking, there's a couple of people I follow and they've got a great spin on words and how they communicate. And I'm thinking, wow. If you just imagine, like in the next sort of like 10 or 20 years, how different he's going to be from an emotional sense. Not like saying that he's going to be weak or anything like that. Because there's always there's key things that you need to develop. For me, I look at it and not live in hope, but I really feel that there's going to be a generation that's going to come up behind and just go, hey, enough's enough. Like I actually want this because, like, one, I'm confident with who I am.
Yeah.
I can really articulate and feel like different things rather than just being like bashing people over the head saying this is the way it used to be.
Right.
And it's like, no, I want something different. And I generally think that there is that probably my generation, maybe the one or two behind, who've got kids and who are looking through it through a different lens with this idea of this is how I had it, but I didn't necessarily like it and I want to do something different that will improve. I think you're going to see like a massive like swell back where people say enough's enough. I think we actually have to use it in a better way. Yeah,
and I hope, and I think you can see it, like that we are again underestimating, I think, the next generation coming through, like what they actually want and how they see the world. And I'm hoping a lot of them do reject it. I'm hoping they continue to chase knowledge in the right way and read books and educate themselves and not rely on ChatGPT for every answer under the sun. And because it's not good for us. It's going to make us dumb. It's going to make us stupid, and it's not going to make us happy. It's going to be very unfulfilling, and I think it's the wrong path.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, we'll wrap it up there, guys. Thank you so much, Andy. Andy, how can people get hold of you? How can they reach you?
The social media, I am Mac Fitness is probably the simple one that I actually use.
Yeah.
I mean, follow me on there, and that way you get an idea rather than sort of like shifting people websites and stuff like that. Yeah, I think follow on there and interact, and I'll be super.
And go from there. Okay, guys. Don't forget, guys, right now we have all our June specials going on. We got discounted personal training sessions, discounted memberships. We got lots of events going on all the Saturdays of these community workouts this month. We've also got our Built to Last webinar coming up on June 14th, which is me and Emylee taking a deep dive into all this stuff, into the lifestyle stuff, into the peptide stuff, how much you should be working out, what kind of workouts you should be doing, what you should be eating, how much you should be sleeping, supplements, peptides, the whole deep dive. And we'd love to see you there. Don't forget, one attendee to that webinar will get a free mentorship program worth $3,000. So it's well worth it. And we are also doing our Friends with Benefits month. So if you bring in a friend, they get a free week at the gym. And then if you do that, you both get entered into a raffle to win tickets for Coachella next year. So super cool prize there. And if your friend with benefits joins the gym, you actually get 10 ticket entrance into the Coachella raffle. So plenty of reasons to get in the gym, for the reasons we were just talking about, right? It's much more fun to work out with friends, be around good people, have a good time. You're much more likely to stick with it, be motivated. If you say, see you tomorrow at 6 a.m. at the gym, see you tomorrow at 6 p.m. at the gym, can't wait to see, like, it works, it's better, all right, to do it. Thanks again to Andy. Andy, you're awesome. Love you, brother, and can't wait to see you more and do more in the future. So
Cheers, man.
cool. Yeah, great to have you here. All right, guys, we'll see you next time, and take care. And we're